on a live edition of Dolphins Today. My name is Jake Repa, and as always, I am fired up to be with you. And even though we're into the off season, the news, the rumors, everything surrounding the Aqua and Orange continues to change day by day. So we've got a ton to get to on this live edition of Dolphins Today. Wednesdays are my favorite day of the week because it allows me to say hi to each and every one of the Dolphins Today community that makes makes this possible here at Chat Sports. And so for that, we welcome one, we welcome all with open arms, fired up to be with you. And while we get it going, I want to get some shout outs going right away. So let me know down in the comments, in the chat, where are you watching from on this fine Wednesday afternoon on a live edition of Dolphins Today. All righty, and with that, it is time to welcome in the one and only. He always has me laughing, barely able to keep myself together and keep the composure. See, there it is. Jeremy Chugs, how the hell are you?
How are we doing? Let's go.
All right, Chugs, when we started this live show, the number one goal was to make it through. We don't want to have a premature conclusion to the show like we did a few weeks ago.
You can still get pregnant from premature show endings.
That is true. That is true. You can never be too careful. But lots to get to on this live edition of Dolphins Today, the largest Dolphins YouTube community on the internet.
We have people from everywhere. We got Jaden from Miami, Raul from Murphy, North Carolina, Miami Do fans, content from Naples, and Dominic says, my cousin lives in Murphy.
No way.
Liar.
No way. Chad Jones is in the chat from Virginia. Chad Jones. Who? Chad Jones. Who?
Dominic
Chad Jones.
from H-Town.
Hey, there you go. That's where Chugs used to hail from, is H-Town. How about Stetson in Atlanta, the ATL? Todd from Brooksville, Florida. Todd. How the hell are you? Who else we got in there? Raul, population 1900.
Kelly's from Bradenton.
Kelly Hutchinson, one of the realest of the real.
Jay Stone from Mexico Beach. Ralph Miller from Syracuse, New York.
Concrete jungle where dreams are made of. All right, enough of that. Rick from Rochester.
Yeah, we sound too close to the original. We can't do copyright.
That's right. They're going to mistake us for. Who sings that song?
Is that Alicia Keys?
That's right. Then you got Jay-Z.
Dave from South Africa. My fiance and her family is from South Africa.
That is true. Can confirm.
And your best friend who doesn't invite me out. They're all from South Africa.
Big soccer family from South Africa.
Symbiotic Toot from Cape Breton Island, Canada. Bonjour.
No borders. Dolphins Today knows no borders. Jay Stone, Mexico Beach.
You've heard of Doctors Without Borders. This is Fins Without Borders.
That's great stuff. Where did we leave off? There's so many coming in here. Oh, yeah, I was going to ask Rick. Is it Rick from Rochester? Are we talking Rochester, New York, Rochester, Minnesota, Rochester, Michigan? Fun fact, I used to live in Rochester, Michigan.
Yeah.
Wild.
No matter where you live, we all got to eat. Am I right?
There is no doubt about that. And when you got to eat, look no further than America's #1 meal delivery service. And it's the last day of January, but it's not too late to start that resolution. And hell, we'll do you one better. Instead of a resolution, how about just making choices that lead to success? And that's where Factor comes in, so that you're ready for the new year with Factor's ready to eat, fresh, never frozen meals that are dietitian approved and guaranteed to take the stress out of meal prepping. And oh yeah, it's going to set you up for success in the 2024 new year. So skip the grocery store, skip the prep work, and say goodbye to the cooking fatigue instead. How about you get some chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered, let me say that again, delivered right to your door with over 35 meals to choose from per week. And that includes options like keto, Calorie Smart, vegan, veggie, and so much more. And don't forget about the 55 weekly add-ons. I'm not even kidding you. 55. That's a lot of them. You'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart those resolutions and start making choices that lead to success. And hey, don't you dare take my word for it. You got to see for yourself. Head to factormeals.com/FinzChat50 and use code FinzChat50 to get 50% off. And Rima, did you stutter? Did you say 50 like 50? I sure did. That's code FinzChat50. 50 at factormeals.com/FinzChat50 to get 50% off.
Ralph, that's my bad. He said, Jugs, you're yelling too much. So my next question, what is your confidence level in the Dolphins front office going into this season? If you could please scale it for me from 1 to 10, that would be very much appreciated.
For the next 60 seconds, we will do this show in library tone. Do you remember going to the library as a child?
Scale it from 1 to 10 for me.
Confidence level in the Dolphins front office.
How do you feel about it? How do you feel about the confidence level in the Dolphins front office?
I always got shushed at the library. You're being too loud. You need to calm down.
I'm at about a 7.
Yeah, I will actually say this. You look back at Chris Grier's draft class from last year, he hit home run with Devon Achane. I think we can all agree with that. So that keeps it from being below a 5 for me.
Chad gives it a 0.
Oh, no, I don't. Chad Jones, I'm a big fan of Chad Jones. Chad Jones, not a big fan of Chris Grier.
Really?
I believe so, if I remember that. Chad, do I have that correct? Not a fan of Chris Grier. Chris Grier has a lot to prove. I will say that because this roster has been very, very close, but you still are the general manager of the team with the longest postseason winless streak in the NFL. That's not a good spot to be in.
I mean, also, if you're looking at, Dolphins fans and how they've been able to draft, obviously they hit a home run with Devon Achane, but you look at guys who were drafted with some of the, I would say top picks, but you lost some of your top ones. But
right.
The higher picks in the Dolphins draft, Channing Tindall, Cam Smith, nothing.
Yep. I think it's a good point here from Dominique Veluso. Cam Smith not playing makes it an incomplete. And I'll put my hand up on this one. I was the first to call Cam Smith a bust because I really believed in Vic Fangio and Vic Fangio's defense. But now as more has come out, and we're going to talk about that on today's show, maybe Cam Smith deserves a second chance, or at least a chance, because he never got a chance. And maybe he can be really good, and maybe he can live up to that second-round hype.
And Todd says, let's get to the defensive coordinator conversation. So we can frame this as that as well. What's your confidence level in the front office to pick the right DC for this team, Todd? Do you think they'll be able to knock it out of the park? I mean, when Fangio was hired last year, I remember everybody saying, oh my goodness.
Fangio.
Like, I can't believe the Dolphins have Vic Fangio. Did not end up working out, even though the defense looked pretty good.
At times. But as more has come out, a lot of the players didn't like playing for Fangio. But that's a great point by both Jeremy Chuggs and Todd Watson here. If you want a deep dive on the Dolphins defensive coordinator search, you've come to the right place. That's our first segment on the agenda for today. We're taking a deep dive into the Dolphins defensive coordinator search. That's segment number 1. Segment number 2, a deep dive into the Dolphins draft talk and what's on their big board. And then, as always, an Ask Anything Dolphins mailbag.
Jay Stone said, what's the latest on Vrabel? But like we said, we have a mailbag coming up. So if you could go down and use #Dolphins in the comment section, go ahead and ask that question, and we'll be able to answer that later on in the mailbag, because I do feel like that's a pretty intriguing topic of, obviously the Seattle job's off the board. The only one left is the Commanders job. Do you see Mike Vrabel going to the Commanders? I mean, I think that would be a good hire for the Commanders, but they just got off of a defensive coach. Do they want to go back on the defensive route?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I would put Vrabel as a top candidate as a defensive coordinator, but he hasn't interviewed with the Dolphins yet.
I mean, Do you think he feels disrespected?
Yeah.
Being the Titans head coach and actually doing a
I was just going to say,
decent job.
He had a run there with the Titans, and if you can win in Nashville with the Titans, and I think it was more of just a lack of connectivity with the front office and the ownership with the Titans for Vrabel than it was an actual performance.
Use hashtag Dolphins in your comment. I see you use hashtag in there. Put hashtag Dolphins and then the rest of your comment.
That lets our little system guy pick it up and throw it into the mailbag. Who is that system guy thing? Mr. Bot, Mr. YouTube Robot? Is that how it works? Yeah. I don't know. That's Chuck's. It's above my pay grade. Use that hashtag Dolphins or you can super chat to get your questions in. And you know what? It's only appropriate that we ask this question. I know it doesn't really tickle my fancy because I'm with the Super Bowl matchup.
If you're a Dolphins fan, you're typing your C, right? You want you want to lose to the team that wins the Super Bowl. Because then, in essence, if you beat them, you're a Super Bowl caliber team.
It's one way to look at it. The Chiefs certainly had the Dolphins better upper hand, beat them twice this past season, once in Germany and, of course, once at Arrowhead in the playoffs. But, yeah, you know what? It's the big game. It's the Super Bowl. It's in Vegas. And as NFL fans, of course, we got to talk about the Super Bowl, no matter how much the matchup might make us feel depressed. All right, Dominic says for
your non-biased opinion.
Yeah.
Take your, aqua glasses off.
That's right. I'll take my Dolphins glasses off.
Who do you think is going to win this game? And Raul, if you're saying you're not watching, you're lying.
Exactly.
It's the Super Bowl. You're going to watch.
Yep. I will take all glasses off and honestly look at both rosters. I think the 49ers, I think they win. I don't want to say it's the Super Bowl, so I'm not going to say easily, but I think that 49ers had a top run offense, top pass offense, and a top defense. The Chiefs, to their credit, actually have a really good defense. It's not really the identity of the Chiefs when we thought back to some of those teams that have been in the Super Bowl, but you look at the way they've won, and it's been with their defense.
I think the Chiefs win, and I don't know if it's close.
Really? Oh, we're on opposite sides here.
You have the best player in the world in
True.
Patrick Mahomes. You have a defense that is good. I think the Chiefs, and they've been there before, they've been to the mountaintop. Kyle Shanahan hasn't proven that he can go to the mountaintop and achieve at the highest level. He's gotten there multiple times as a head coach and an OC, but when it comes down to it, I think two major things. Head coach and quarterback. I think Kansas City has the upper hand in both. I think I trust Andy Reid more than I trust Kyle Shanahan.
I'll take that with the head coach and the star power at the quarterback position. Obviously, you take Patrick Mahomes. And it's kind of an underrated factor that not a lot of people are talking about. In that NFC title game, the Lions ran all over the 49ers. You can't win games if you don't stop the run.
They were down by 27 points. If they're down by 27 points against the Chiefs, they're not coming back.
No doubt. They got to figure the Niners, that is.
And that's why I think the Chiefs, and to their credit, if they win the Super Bowl, they will have had, according to advanced metrics, the hardest path in the history of the NFL to a Super Bowl victory. More than I believe it was the 2011 Giants. They are currently hold the top spot because obviously they had to beat the 18-0 Patriots.
Yeah, they were a wild card team that year too.
Yeah, and they had to beat a lot of higher seeds. But you look at the Chiefs; they beat the Dolphins, they were the best wild card team out there. They then had to beat the Buffalo Bills, who were arguably the other best team in the AFC. And then they had to play the number 1 seed in the Baltimore Ravens. Then now they're playing the 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah.
So according to advanced metrics, if the Chiefs win, that will be the hardest path to the Super Bowl in modern history.
That's crazy. I didn't even think of that. Wow. That's insane.
Yeah.
But let me know down in the comments. We got 43 people watching. And you know what? We've got some special things planned for the off-season. We had some off-season meetings with our director of live content programming here at Chat Sports. And
Mitchell Renz.
Mitchell Renz, host of the Raiders Report. We've got some good stuff coming up for you in the month of February. Some promotions, and I know it's January 31st, so we haven't quite launched this into activation yet. That comes in the month of February. But we are going to be promoting a couple of these items. You'll have a chance to win them during our live shows at the end of the month. A Hall of Fame helmet, a raffle with a Dan Marino bobblehead, and hand up, I picked this one up myself, picked it out, if you will, because it is an awesome bobblehead. And if you see down at the bottom there, Dan Marino with the bottom of the bobblehead is actually mounted to the Dolphins Stadium. It's a really cool bobblehead. We're going to raffle that off at the end of the month, and then we're going to have a February MVP custom Dolphins jersey giveaway for our February MVP, whoever super chats the most. So this is starting in February, not quite yet, but just a little seed to plant in your mind, a little teaser for next Wednesday's live show. That'll be the first chance we have to get this going. Who's ready to start the video? Like the video so we could get this edition of Dolphins Today going. We only have 16 likes and 36 people watching. Break my heart. The 10 people, math is hard, 20 people that did not like the video.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, we lost a like. We're down to 15. How does that happen?
Oh, wow.
You guys are killing me.
We're in shambles right now. We got to get the train rolling. They're saying, hey, Reetma, Chugs, we want to talk about the DC candidates.
Yep.
I get it. Okay, we'll talk DC candidates.
We will dive into every single candidate that's interviewed or scheduled to interview with the Dolphins. But first, we got to get to at least 30 likes. You guys are killing me. Usually it's 50.
Or at least 20.
Yeah, at least 20. Can we do it? Chad Jones says Miami is in shambles. Well, that would, by the trickle-down effect, then that would mean Dolphins Today is in shambles. All right, we're up to 18.
If we don't get 20 likes instead of DC search, we'll just talk Marvel versus DC.
No, please don't make me do that. Please don't make me do that. Come on. Oh, we're one away from 20. We got 43 people watching.
I can taste it.
We're just going to, actually, you know what? Who was the person that wanted us to be quieter? Was that Todd? I think it was. We're just going to be silent till we get our 20th like. Okay, we got our 20th like. Let's start the video. A deep dive into the Dolphins defensive coordinator search is coming up next on Dolphins Today. You might have heard the Miami Dolphins are in search of their next defensive coordinator. And on today's show, we are going to take a deep dive into each and every candidate that has interviewed or is scheduled to interview with the Miami Dolphins for that new defensive coordinator. As we've been saying, out with the old, in with the new. Goodbye, Vic Fangio. It wasn't meant to be. And it's time to unpack who we think might be the best fit in Miami. So there's a huge board of Dolphins defensive coordinator candidates. Some of these guys have interviewed, and when you go down the list, the only one you can completely cross off in Sharpie is Bobby Babich, who accepted the Bills defensive coordinator job. But Brandon Staley, that's a guy to keep your eye on. It's probably my number one choice if there's a hire outside of the coaching staff and outside of the organization. Because you look at Anthony Campanile and Ryan Slowik collectively, they coach the linebackers for the Dolphins. Campanile, the inside linebackers coach. Slowik, the outside linebackers coach. And if you watch Hard Knocks, you know Campanile can get the guys going. He gets the people going. Definitely has that camaraderie with the players, and the motivational factor is there. Slowik also has a resume that certainly deems worthy of being considered for a defensive coordinator spot. But let's start with Brandon Staley, because if you took just a blank resume and you put the blindfold over it so you don't know who you're talking about, take off the name at the top, I would probably say Brandon Staley has the most impressive resume, and for that reason might be the number one target for the Dolphins. He's the Chargers head coach for from 2021 to 2023. Obviously, it didn't really work out. But when he was the defensive coordinator with the Rams in 2020, he was tremendous. And part of that tremendous defense were guys like Jalen Ramsey. So obviously there's a level of continuity there between Brandon Staley and current Dolphins cornerback Jalen Ramsey. And oh yeah, he's also in contact with Mike McDaniel because they have the same agent. There's a level of chemistry there, and the two of them, I would say, are more than just acquaintances when you share the same agent. That's certainly a commonality. But it's not just the Miami Dolphins that are after Brandon Staley as a potential defensive coordinator. Yesterday, Ian Rappaport, an NFL insider, tweeting out that former Chargers coach Brandon Staley is scheduled to interview with the Rams tomorrow for their defensive coordinator job, formerly held by Raheem Morris, who obviously is now the Falcons head coach. And sources say Staley is a top defensive coordinator available and has considerable interest, which, if you think about it from a Dolphins perspective, if he's interested in the Rams and they have interest in him, then maybe you start moving away from Brandon Staley as your number one candidate, because whoever becomes the Dolphins' next defensive coordinator has to want to be there and can't just be brought in, and then you run the risk of the turnover like you had with Vic Fangio. But the Rams certainly have every reason to target Brandon Staley as their next defensive coordinator, because when he was there in 2020, look at the numbers. It is impressive in every sense of the word. They were the number one defense in the NFL under Brandon Staley in 2020. First in passing yards allowed, first in passing touchdowns allowed. They really locked down the opposition. Third in rushing yards allowed, and sixth in rushing touchdowns allowed. So whether you're talking pass defense or run defense, Brandon Staley put together and orchestrated a top caliber defense in 2020 as the defensive coordinator for the Rams. Now, thinking about where both these franchises are right now, Miami Dolphins and the LA Rams, both coming off first-round playoff exits, but both making the playoffs, I got to ask you this. If Staley is offered both defensive coordinator jobs, which one would he take? Very interesting question. If you think it's Miami, go ahead and type MIA for the Dolphins. If you think it's the Rams, go ahead and type LAR. It's our pinned comment for today, so let me know what you think down in the comments. For me, I honestly think if you look at it objectively, the Dolphins' defensive coordinating job is very appealing. When you look at the playmakers, Jalen Ramsey is a guy you can plan a defense around. When the edge rushers are healthy, we saw what this Dolphins pass rush did. They were third in total sacks and second in pass rush win rate. So there are two appealing components to taking the Dolphins' defensive coordinating job. I also think it's a roster that's in win now mode. Not to say that the Rams aren't. Again, both teams coming off playoff appearances, but first round playoff exits. And so obviously I've got my Dolphins today glasses on, and I'd say I'd take the Miami job. And maybe it's a little bit different as far as the climate. You got a warm weather climate on the West Coast in Los Angeles. You got the same thing on the East Coast in Miami. So at some point, Brandon Staley would have to choose. There is the level of familiarity with being the Rams defensive coordinator that he was in 2020. But if I'm Brandon Staley, you got the opportunity to coach with Mike McDaniel, a close personal friend of yours, as well as a loaded roster on the defensive side that's ready to win now. Hey, Brandon Staley, if that job's offered for you, sign on the dotted line. We'd love to have you in Miami. Now, speaking of Miami, an internal hire makes a lot of sense in my mind as well. Dolphins linebacker coach Anthony Campanile is certainly one of the more appealing options. And since he's been with Miami since 2020, you've seen him bond with a lot of the players, especially on the defensive side. We saw that on Hard Knocks. And he also has collegiate level experience coaching with Michigan, Boston College, and Rutgers, and was a candidate for the Dolphins defensive coordinator job last year when they elected to go with Vic Fangio. So if you're Mike McDaniel, you're the Dolphins front office, you think, hey, if this guy was a realistic candidate last year, one more year of experience, one more year of growing within the organization, it makes a lot of sense to promote Anthony Campanile to defensive coordinator. And you might even make the same case for another internal candidate in hiring Ryan Slowik, the current outside linebacker coach for the Miami Dolphins, who has spent the last 2 seasons with Miami, and before that spent some time with the Browns as an outside linebacker coach, and even spent some time in the collegiate ranks as well as a defensive analyst for the Tennessee Volunteers in 2017. And again, I don't want to take too much away from the hard knock scenes, but when you saw Ryan Slowik in action, you saw him working with guys like Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips before he got hurt, Andrew Van Ginkel. Those are 3 guys at his position group that had breakout years. And so obviously he's getting through to the players. He has a way to connect with the players. And I think That's a huge component to being a defensive coordinator in this league, in addition to having the mindset of the X's and O's and to be able to devise a scheme that puts your players in the best position to make plays. So that makes a lot of sense as well. So we got 3 very viable candidates here. I want you to pick a defensive coordinator for me. Write down in the comments if it's Brandon Staley, type BS. If it's Anthony Campanile, type AC. Or Ryan Slowik, go ahead and type RS. Obviously, AC and RS being the internal hires, BS being an external hire as he comes over formerly as the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, I think ultimately I'm pointing out the obvious here, but Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel have to get this hire right. You can't stress it enough, because what seemed like the right hire with Vic Fangio took less than a year for it to completely unravel and it be the wrong hire. And I think when you have the turnover at the coordinating positions, it sets the franchise back, and the Dolphins can ill afford to do that. So ensuring that this hire is 100% foolproof, 100% correct, has to be at the absolute top of the priority list for Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel. All right, coming up, we've got more candidates to run through. Those were just my top 3, but there are plenty more to take a deep dive on, so we'll do that next. But first, I got to tell you about today's proud presenting sponsor, America's #1 meal delivery service. And yes, you know by now, it is Factor, and Factor's helping you make the best choices in 2024. And here we are, almost all the way through the month, heading into February, and Factor is here to help you with those New Year's resolutions and helping you get started on them with ready-to-eat meal delivery service that takes the stress out of meal prepping and sets you up for success in the new year. So say goodbye to annoying trips to the grocery store. I can't stand those, by the way. Say goodbye to the meal prep work. Say goodbye to all the containers that you've got all over your fridge from meal prepping. No. Say goodbye to the cooking fatigue as well. And, say goodbye to dishes, too. Because with Factor, the meals are delivered straight to your door. You can't make this up. It is 100% convenient, and it is incredible as far as utilizing the meal delivery service. It takes just 2 minutes to heat up. There's no dishes, and the meals are delicious, fresh, never frozen, dietitian approved. I love the red pepper filet. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. And the Chipotle pork chop. I don't know if that one's on there, but it is to die for. And don't forget about the 55 weekly add-ons that include smoothies. The smoothies are delicious as well. But don't take my word for it. Head to factormeals.com/FinSchat50 and use code FinSchat50 to get 50% off. That's code FinSchat50. Factormeals.com/FinSchat50 to get 50% off. What do I always tell you? We love you and we care about you. So we'll put that link right in the comments of today's video. And check it out, factormeals.com/FinSchat50 for 50% off. All right, we've got more candidates to evaluate and determine who might be the best fit for the Miami Dolphins. And as I mentioned, this is a very, very, very thorough search from the Miami Dolphins because they have a lot of candidates to ensure they hire the right one. Let's take a look at Leslie Frazier. He interviewed with the Miami Dolphins, and he was the former defensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. Again, another guy that boasts an extremely impressive resume. He's been coaching in the NFL since 1999, as well as spending some time with the Baltimore Ravens and Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the defensive coordinator. So again, it's a guy that has a proven track record. He can relate with players, but it's an external hire that hasn't been a defensive coordinator in the NFL this past season. Don't forget, he was also the Vikings head coach. So he has some head coaching experience just like Brandon Staley does. So you bring in a guy that has a really impressive resume, but can he connect and relate to the players? The Dolphins also interviewed Chris Kiffin. And that's right, you might recognize the last name because he's the son of Monty Kiffin and the brother of Lane Kiffin, the head coach at Ole Miss. A football family, you got to love that. He's been with the Texans since 2023 as their linebacker coach. So again, no coordinating experience, but a long resume of NFL experience that includes being the defensive line coach for the Cleveland Browns from 2020 to 2022, and also spent time with San Francisco as their pass rush specialist from 2018 to 2019. So Kiffin kind of represents that guy that's working his way up and has had success at each level of coaching that he's been at. And now to become a defensive coordinator in the NFL would be a huge step. But again, he comes from a football family from Monty Kiffin and the one and only Lane Kiffin. How about Anthony Weaver? Now, here's a guy that also represents exactly what you're looking for in a defensive coordinator, the defensive line coach for the Baltimore Ravens. And like a lot of teams, the Baltimore Ravens as a franchise have the reputation for doing things right in all aspects. And this is a guy that's coached in the NFL since 2012 and has been with the Baltimore Ravens since 2021. He's had a couple of different roles that includes the run game coordinator, as well as the associate head coach and the defensive line coach. So when you think about a guy that also has the leadership and administrative qualities to add to his resume, with Anthony Weaver being an associate head coach, I think that bodes well for him in the interview process as well. So if you're Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier, that's another one that you take note of as, hey, here's a guy that's been an associate head coach for a really well-run organization like the Baltimore Ravens. Certainly something to consider. So take a deep breath with me, and once again, let me know down in the comments how you feel about the Dolphins front office to get this hire right. What is your confidence level in the Dolphins to get the DC hire right? Scale it for me, 1 through 100. If you're 100% confident that the Dolphins will exceed our expectations with this hire, go ahead and type 100. If you've got no hope whatsoever in Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier, type 1. Either way, let me know down in the comments. Because we don't want a Vic Fangio situation with this hire, because Vic Fangio, he wasn't going to go out quietly. Obviously, a week ago, he becomes the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, but he spoke out about what he really thought about the Dolphins and their organization and their players, and questioned their commitment and work ethic. Now, this is Ron Jaworski speaking, who is great friends with Vic Fangio. Ron Jaworski went on a sports talk radio station in Philadelphia talking about Vic Fangio becoming the defensive coordinator. So I think the context is important to reiterate that this is Jaws almost speaking for Vic Fangio, but Jaws said there were some players on that defense, referring to Miami's defense, that didn't want to work, didn't want to put in the effort, didn't want to put the time in. Guys like to party at night. Those are the guys that are whining right now. So leave it to Jaws. I love Jaws. I think he's hilarious. I think he's a good NFL analyst. He knows the game. But I also think this might be a case of him backing his friend up, right? And we know there's two sides to every single story. So I found it very intriguing what Albert Breer, an NFL insider and the senior editor of the Monday Morning Quarterback, had to say about Vic Fangio's departure. Get a load of this. He went on to say Vic Fangio's one-voice approach to running the defensive war on coaches. An example being that he didn't allow position coaches to present their work to the defense, instead gathering information from them and doing it himself. That sort of approach is decidedly old school and seeped through to players who by the end of Vic Fangio's time tuned him out. So I think that's really important to know as well, that Albert Breer, from his perspective as an NFL insider, is saying players were tuning Vic Fangio out because he was too old school, and I think that's what we identified as the underlying problem between Fangio and Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins as a whole. It was old school versus new school, and when you stunt the growth of your assistant coaches and you don't have that collaborative environment, I think that seeps down as well. So two sides to every story. It is what it is. Vic Fangio's gone. He's off to Philadelphia, and I think it's best for both parties to move on. And with that, we are excited for who the Dolphins might hire as their next defensive coordinator for the upcoming season. All right, what a season it's been for Dolphins today. We have my first football season in the books as we are into the offseason. So we did a little number crunching exercise, and I think everybody deserves to know how great of a season it was from Dolphins today. We gained over 12,000 new subscribers this season. That's a testament to each and every one of you, which we certainly appreciate. And I said for the offseason, we've got some lofty goals in mind because right now, our current sub base is 55,480, and we're setting an offseason goal to get up to 58,000 subscribers. And you know what? I kind of want to stretch that into 60 because 60,000 sounds really good. It's a nice round number, and it's less math for me to do that type of thing. 60,000. Can we get there? I certainly think so. So if you know another Dolphins fan, make sure you subscribe and let them know how they can have endless Dolphins content and enjoy each and every angle of the Miami Dolphins. Hey, Chugs! How are ya?
Herman with the super chat.
Oh, Herman, our guy! We love Herman. One of the realest of the real. Oh, man, I appreciate it. I got to get a drink of water before I gear up for what Herman had to say on this.
He says, in my opinion, experienced DCs are the best way to go because the Fins are under a win-now Super Bowl mode. And it is rumored that Grier and McDaniel are on the hot seat. Sam Madison as DC?
Ooh, that's an intriguing name. Has not interviewed yet for the job. I don't know if he's on the Dolphins' radar. But, Herman, I will say this. If experience is your thing, and I don't disagree whatsoever, but that to me would say...
Current cornerback coach.
Yeah, that would to me would say... I think if it's going to be an internal hire, though, I think it's going to be Campanile or Slowik, the two linebacker coaches, since they're the two that have gotten interviews. But if you want a guy with more experience, a guy like Leslie Frazier is kind of tough to beat. He's been a head coach. He's been in the NFL since '99. He's been a defensive coordinator for the Bills. I mean, if you're going off experience alone, him and Brandon Staley probably have the best resume from that.
Personally, for me, my favorite candidate, and I was telling Reetma this before live, is going to be Anthony Weaver. He, player in the league, proven, has really, earned his stripes in the league, being, a D-line coach. He was D-line coach and DC for the Texans for a season, was D-line coach /
associate head coach for the Ravens.
Assistant DC, basically. What a business card.
I was just going to say, did that all fit on one business card?
But I really do think Anthony Weaver would be a great hire for the Miami Dolphins.
I wouldn't mind that one whatsoever as well. If you have it come down to Brandon Staley, Leslie Frazier, or Anthony Weaver as far as the external candidates.
I think I saw Todd say Anthony Weaver earlier. Who do y'all want as your DC? We gave you the option of Brandon Staley and the two internal candidates, Campanile and Slowik, but is there somebody we're missing? Is there somebody that you really want as the DC? I mean, we saw the Mike Vrabel question earlier. If you could get Vrabel as
that'd
the DC,
be awesome. Yeah.
I mean, do you think he takes a year off? I don't think he's getting a head coach.
I honestly think Vrabel, and I don't know the guy personally, and it's no knock on him or whatnot, but I think he has a healthy enough ego that he would see it as taking a step back. And I think when you become the face of a program in terms of being the head coach like he did with the Tennessee Titans, and for a while, they kind of had a role, and they had a couple of playoff appearances. And if you can get to the playoffs with Ryan Tannehill as your quarterback, I think that says a lot about how good your defense is.
I think he's got to take a DC job, and I think he's got to do it this year because the league is, turning into a offensive-minded league where you're seeing these hires of young offensive-minded guys.
Yeah, look at Callahan, the Bengals offensive coordinator, just got a head coach.
Gets hired there. The only one that is moving away from that went away, which I'm really interested to see how that goes for the Seahawks, is they got McDonald, right? The DC for the Ravens. So, and that's another reason why I would move quickly on Weaver because I think he might be a really good candidate to slide in and be the new Ravens DC.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah, because with the Ravens just losing their defensive coordinator to become the Seahawks' new head coach. That's a great point. I think going back to Vrabel real quick, I think he might do the Sean Payton. Take a year off, go on TV, make some money doing that, and then become a head coach next year.
I think he's too much of a football guy.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd be interested if some colleges aren't knocking on his doorstep to be their head coach.
Yeah, I remember people at Ohio State saying they would get rid of Ryan Day. They want Mike Vrabel as their head coach because he went to Ohio State. Oh, a $5 super chat from JB. How about it? Dolphins. We will circle back to this on our Ask Anything mailbag, but when you super chat, you get to cut the line. So shout out to JB. Could Agba and Howard be used to trade up during the draft?
Dominic says it's too late. I don't think it's too late for college. If a smaller Power 5 school or a school that I guess everybody already has their head coaches, but if something were to happen and he steps in, you don't think recruits, you don't think players are going to look at that and say, wow, I want to go play for Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's get to this super chat here. Could Agba and Howard be used to trade up during the draft, JB? It's a great question. Again, we'll circle back to it on our mailbag, but you use the super chat fast pass to cut the line, and I'll say this. Unfortunately, no. And it's just more of my hunch, but I don't see a lot of value with Agba simply because of the contract. And we said this yesterday on Dolphins Today. Agba has the highest base salary on the entire roster for the Miami Dolphins and played less than 20% of defensive snaps. Just say that out loud. It's insane.
You just did.
Yes, as I say it out loud, it is insane to hear. The guy that's making the most money through base salary plays less than 20% of the snaps. And if I know that, every other GM in the NFL knows that, and there's no way they're signing up to pay a guy for him not to produce. And rather than trade Agba, I think he's simply a cut candidate because of the salary cap hell the Dolphins are in, and that's an easy one. You think, okay, I'm not an expert, but if the highest paid player is playing less than 20% of the snaps and isn't producing, I cut his ass and I save a lot of money that can help for the salary cap.
Agreed.
And as far as Xavier Howard, also really highly paid player. And remember one of the first interviews after the end of the season, he was asked about taking a pay cut, and he basically laughed in the reporter's face and said, would you take a pay cut? So I don't think has any interest in taking a pay cut. He still has a few more years on his deal. I think he's another cut candidate for the Dolphins. I said that yesterday on our Dolphins salary cap deep dive, ways to free up cap space. I was all in favor of cutting Emmanuel Agba and cutting Xavier Howard. And as far as the trade market goes, I don't think you'll get anything for him.
I mean, Dominic, Deion Sanders didn't really have a lot of experience recruiting players, and Colorado, I mean, they've soon become, even though it didn't result in the wins this past season, but
everybody was talking about him.
Yeah, I mean, even at Jackson State, he didn't really have the pedigree to go to Jackson State and be a coach there. He was a small-time private school high school coach. He goes there and they win multiple titles.
That's crazy. All right, we've got two more segments to get into on today's live show. And as we take the pulse, are we ready to get into some Dolphins draft talk?
I think so.
I think so. I think it's time to get into some Dolphins draft talk for our second segment on Dolphins Today. All right, time to evaluate the Miami Dolphins draft big board because we know this time of year it's constantly changing. And oh yes, this is the type of roll up your sleeves draft, make it or break it draft for Chris Grier. And taking a look at the Miami Dolphins draft board in 2024, there's a lot of positions of need to address, and there's a lot of different directions Miami can go with the assets that they have in their current draft capital. Because when you think about where this team has been in the past as far as draft capital, this is a welcome sight in 2024 because they've got a first-round pick. How about that? Exceptional stuff. There's a couple of picks missing from the Miami Dolphins because of the trade with Bradley Chubb. But overall, this is draft capital that the Miami Dolphins can make the most of. So, as we look to what this team has, you see they got the number 21 overall pick, and then the 23rd selection in the second round, which equates to the 55th overall pick. They forfeited that round 3 pick. Thanks a lot for the tampering. Not good. Round 4, Don't have a pick there either because that was traded in the Bradley Chubb deal. Then they're back on the board in round 5 with the 23rd selection, which is 156 overall, and 2 in round 6. Remember, that was part of a trade as well. And then in round 7, they've got the 21st selection, 238 overall. So 6 total picks in 2024. And we look back to what Chris Grier did in 2023. Couple of swings and misses, if we're being honest, but also a home run pick in the 3rd round there with the star rookie running back Devon Achane. Really the only pick that salvaged this draft for Chris Grier. So a lot on the table, as there always is when it comes to the NFL draft. And because only one of those picks worked out from a year ago, and maybe Cam Smith will work out. Maybe he will. With the new defensive coordinator, new system, this, that, and the other, maybe he gets an opportunity. But right now, the only pick from 2023 that worked out is Devon Achane. And so because of that, I think it's important for Chris Grier and the front office to really lock it in, dial it in, and obviously that's pointing out the obvious, but they got to come through in the 2024 draft. They have to learn from their mistakes they made last year and be ready to go in 2024. And so when you think about that, you got to start to think as a fan, what's your confidence level in Chris Grier and company? So let me know down in the comments. Scale it for me, 1 through 10, your confidence level in the general manager, Chris Grier's drafting ability. He's shown some hits, but he's also shown some misses. So let me know what that confidence level is down in the comments. Scale it for me, 1 through 10. Now, I think because Chris Grier has hit on a couple of draft picks, and maybe Cam Smith will in fact turn out, I think I'm not ready to close the book on Chris Grier the way some people are. I still have moderate confidence in him. Let's say a 5 right down the middle, but I'll say it again. This is a make it or break it year for Chris Grier to prove that he has the ability to draft meaningful impact players that make contributions from day one. We're seeing in the NFL, that's how you build teams. You get the players on those cheaper rookie deals that can be substantial impact players on the field as first-year players, second-year players, third-year players, and so on and so forth, and you build that young core through the draft. So hopefully Chris Grier is able to do that. Now, coming up, we've got a CBS Sports first-round mock draft to get into. We'll also mock a second-round pick as well for you. But first, guys, I got to tell you about these Fanatics Dolphins gear. I know it's the offseason, but the NFL Jam t-shirts never go out of style. I picked one up the other day. They are awesome, and we've got a special code, special link for you that we'll put in the comments and description of today's video, so you can use that Chat Sports code for us. But I'm telling you, whether it be the new school NFL Jam t-shirts or the old school ones are timeless as well, with the NFL Blitz Dan Marino t-shirt, you got to snag one for yourself at Fanatics, the best and one-stop shop for exclusive Miami Dolphins gear. Now, CBS Sports mock draft. It's important, again, to obviously I'm telling you what you already know, but this is a mock draft. This is one guy's opinion. Josh Edwards, who writes for CBS Sports, has Troy Fatanue out of Washington going to Miami as the number 21 overall pick. Now, if you've been following us all offseason, you know we've done a couple of mock drafts already, and Troy Fatanue is a guy's name that keeps coming up. And why not? He played extremely well the past season at Washington, who, if you don't follow college football, you probably still know that Washington made it all the way to the national championship game before losing to Michigan. And they had a tremendous offense with Michael Penix Jr., a load of wide receiver weapons, including Rome Odunze. And regardless of how good your skill players are, you got to have the offensive linemen. And Troy Fatanue anchored that Washington offensive line. He was a third-team All-American selection. But what's also telling about his abilities is what Mel Kiper, the draft expert, had to say about Troy Fatanue, saying he allowed 2 career sacks on nearly 1,250 pass blocking snaps. That's a pretty good percentage. It wouldn't shock me if a team drafted Fatanue to play tackle, but I see all-pro upside for him at guard. So it's kind of a luxury to draft a guy that has the versatility to play multiple positions. And when you look at his Pro Football Focus grades as a tackle for Washington in 2023. Overall, 75, but that pass blocking grade is impressive, 88.2. The run blocking can improve, of course, but this is a team that threw the ball all the time. Over 70% of the snaps from Washington were passing the football, and he only allowed 2 sacks. That is incredible stuff. And when you think about the positional needs for the Dolphins, offensive line is certainly at the top of the list because this is a Dolphins offensive line that was banged up all season long. And when you start to think about where this Dolphins front office can plug and play a little bit with the draft picks, offensive line is an important spot to be in because the Dolphins are expected to be around over $40 million over the cap. So it's important to start plugging those rookie deals in with impact players that can make meaningful contributions, starting with that 21st overall pick in the draft. And who knows, maybe you go offensive line in the draft and then you have the ability to say goodbye to guys like Connor Williams, Robert Hunt, guys that are free agents on the offensive line because you've replaced them with viable players on the offensive line through the draft. But that's just one potential strategy. Now, you look at the Dolphins' offensive line. They were banged up all season long. They have 12 different starting combinations. And as I mentioned, Robert Hunt and Connor Williams are both free agents. So who's to say if they'll be back or not? And in a lot of ways, the Dolphins' offensive line overperformed or outperformed some of their expectations. But one area they were not great in the pass block win rate. You see that? 31st in the NFL out of 32 teams in pass block win rate. That needs to improve, and Troy Fatanue could be a guy to help him do just that. Now, also, other options for the Miami Dolphins at offensive line or just prospects from the offensive line. We've talked about Jackson Powers Johnson, the guard center out of Oregon. J.C. Latham is another guy that a lot of draft experts have mocked to Miami in that first round. And don't forget about Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State. He's an offensive tackle that showed great athleticism for his size. And Jordan Morgan, an offensive tackle from Arizona, also very athletic for his size as well. But for me, I think your top 2 candidates there are Jackson Powers Johnson or Troy Fatanue. Both guys, to me, scream first-round talent. They scream versatility, athleticism, plug-and-play guys on the offensive line. And if last year's any indication, there's a lot of times where offensive linemen will be called to play different positions. So having that ability to cross-train, whether it be Liam Eichenberg playing center or stepping in at guard, whatever it may be, there were times where Dolphins offensive linemen had to play multiple spots on that O-line. So both Fatanue and Jackson Powers Johnson have proven they have the ability to do so. But you be the GM with me for a second. Who's your pick for the Dolphins in the first round? Let me know down in the comments. Would love to hear what you have to say on this one. Now, I want to get into our second round mock draft. Before we do that, it's important to note that the Miami Dolphins, again, have that second round pick. And it's also important to note that with that second round pick, you can't miss because there's no pick in the third round as of now, and there's no pick in the fourth round. So crucial to get that second round pick correct. Now, Pro Football Focus came out with a 5-round mock draft by Trevor Sikkema, and he had Jackson Powers Johnson falling all the way to the Dolphins at 55, which to me would be a dream scenario. I don't think that's going to happen. I really think Jackson Powers Johnson will be selected before the second round. I think he's a first-round talent, but we'll know more after the scouting combine and, of course, the Senior Bowl as well. But if he falls all the way to pick number 55 and the Dolphins can swoop him up there, I'm all for it. Now, Dane Brugler of The Athletic saw the Dolphins going in a different direction. He had them taking Edgerrin Cooper, an athletic outside linebacker, edge rusher type from Texas A&M in the second round with the 55th pick overall. And based on the injury bug at the defensive end edge rusher position for the Dolphins, maybe shoring up that component of the depth chart would be important. Jalen Phillips having a breakout year. He was one of the Dolphins' last first-round picks. In fact, the Dolphins' last 2 first-round picks are Jalen Phillips and Jalen Waddle. So They've kind of hit 2 home runs there. Bradley Chubb also has been a great defensive edge player. After coming over from Denver, he was having a breakout season before he got hurt. Andrew Van Ginkel's a free agent, so question mark there, but we know he improved his level of play as well. So maybe Edgerrin Cooper could be added to the edge roster in the second round of the draft, because this Dolphins defense thrived when they were able to get pressure on the opposing quarterbacks last year in 2023. In fact, they finished with the 3rd most sacks and the 2nd best sack rate in the NFL. So if Edgerrin Cooper is the guy and can help that, I'm also for that as well. But I want to know what you think. Do you want the Dolphins to go offense or defense, O or D, in the second round? If it's an offensive player you want, type O. If you want them to switch back to the defensive side of the ball, type D. Either way, let me know down in the comments. And as I stated, my opinion is we'll know more after the Senior Bowl that's going on right now. And, of course, the scouting combine, where we learn a lot more about how these players can test out and, of course, perform the various tests at the combine. And I think as that starts to go on and progress, we start to narrow our focus as the Dolphins and determine who will be the best player to fit the aqua and orange in the first and second round, and every pick for that matter. So, as always, we want to continue to grow here on Dolphins Today, and we've experienced all kinds of tremendous growth throughout the season. That's a testament to each and every one of you, but as we do here at Chat Sports, we're setting up a goal to go even further. We're getting lackadaisical or complacent. In fact, we're striving for more, so help us reach our goal that we've set, 58,000 subscribers by the end of February. Tell a Dolphins friend. I know you guys have a lot of friends out there, and if you've already subscribed, thank you, but tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a sibling, cousin, aunt, uncle, whatever it is. We want to continue to see our channel grow, because the more subscribers, the more Dolphins content, the more live shows, and covering the aqua and orange from every angle is our passion here on Dolphins Today. So subscribe to the channel, and let's continue to grow. Hey, Chugs!
Good job. Good job. I was messing with some stuff back here, but you didn't let it phase you at all, except for once.
I saw the messing going on. What were we messing with?
I was just fixing a couple things back here.
He's fixing a divot. Have you ever seen Space Jam?
Of course.
You know when Bill Murray and they're digging that hole in the golf course? Big giant hole. He comes up.
Fixing a divot.
He's fixing a divot. He's fixing a divot. He's fixing a divot. Great movie. All right.
All right. We have our Dolphins Today mailbag, our award-winning Dolphins Today mailbag, my mom's favorite mailbag in all of YouTube. So go down and use hashtag Dolphins or Super Chat to get your questions in. We'll put you up on screen.
We love that. If you want to be on screen, how are we doing on the questions, by the way?
I'm telling you, it's world famous.
It is.
Mailbag. If I knew my dad, I bet you he'd love it too.
If my dad was still alive, he'd love it too. If my mom was still alive, she'd love it too. Have we made you all excited enough for the mailbag yet? I think so. It's going to be award-winning. Ask anything. Mailbag. Mail time. Remember Blue's Clues?
Mail time. Mail time. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I said, do you remember Blue's Clues? Do you remember the show?
Yeah, of course. I was just singing.
We just got a letter. We just got a letter. We just got a letter. I wonder what it says. Oh, is it? I wonder who it's from, or I wonder what it says.
I thought it was. I wonder who it's from.
I think you're right. Let's try that again. We just got a letter. 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 I wonder who it's from.
Herman J. Mortimer. All right, we're losing them, Remo. We're losing them.
We don't want that. We love you guys. Wow,
Most of you.
This channel's really gone downhill. All right. I say that, so I kid. Let's do it. Ask anything. Mailbag.
Are you ready to get it popping?
Get it popping. Yeah.
Here we go. Dolphins Today mailbag. You can continue to use hashtag Dolphins if you want to get on the show.
Hey, it's an Ask Anything mailbag. As always, fired up to be with you. No questions are off limits. It's the off season, so we could be taking questions from every possible angle. That's what we love to do here. And let's not waste any more time because my man Herman skipped the line with a super chat. Shout out to Herman J. Mortimer. And here's what we've got on the Ask Anything mailbag. In my opinion, experienced DCs are the best way to go because the Fins are under a win-now Super Bowl mode, and it is rumored Grier and McDaniel are on the hot seat. Sam Madison as DC. That would be the defensive backs coach for the Miami Dolphins. And based on the reports out there, the two internal candidates that the Dolphins have interviewed for the defensive coordinator job are Anthony Campanile, the linebackers coach, and Ryan Slowik, the outside linebackers coach. So, Herman, I think if you're going to see an internal hire from somebody that's already with the Dolphins coaching staff, it's going to be one of those two guys. Remember, Anthony Campanile interviewed for the defensive coordinator job last year before eventually Vic Fangio became that defensive coordinator. So if the Dolphins thought he was qualified and ready to go at least for an interview in 2022, maybe, in fact, they'll feel that same way this time around and hire him. But also, ultimately, I think guys like Brandon Staley, Leslie Frazier, they have that really impressive resume, as well as Anthony Weaver, the Ravens defensive line coach. So that would be kind of my narrow focus of the potential defensive coordinator replacements and hires in 2024. From JB to JR. Could Agba and Howard be used to trade up during the draft? Referring to Emmanuel Agba, the defensive end, and Xavier Howard, the cornerback for the Dolphins. And in a word, no. Unfortunately, Emmanuel Agba is the highest paid player on the Dolphins roster by way of base salary, and his production was towards the very bottom. He took a backseat to guys like Jalen Phillips when he was healthy, Bradley Chubb all season until that Week 17 injury against the Baltimore Ravens, and Andrew Van Ginkel all outperformed Emmanuel Agba at the defensive end position, despite Agba being the highest paid player on the Miami Dolphins. So, if the Dolphins decide to cut Emmanuel Agba, they could save upwards of $18 million towards that cap deficit that they're in. And I think that's a more viable option for the team considering he played less than 20% of snaps. On the flip side, in terms of trade bait or trade value, nobody wants Emmanuel Agba on the team because he costs a lot and he doesn't do anything. So nothing personal against Emmanuel Agba, but he is about as little appealing or has about the least amount of appeal on the trade market as I can think of in just about anybody. And as for Xavier Howard, nothing personal again, but I think his best days are behind him. He showed signs of aging. He showed signs of being injury prone. And maybe that's not fair, but at the end of the day, the guy was injured for a lot of games, missed 5 games this past season, and seemed to have lost a step from time to time. But he's been with the Dolphins since 2016, his entire career with Miami. Still has a couple of years left on his deal, but I don't think anybody's, breaking down the door to have Xavier Howard play for their football team. From Ricky Williams. Oh my goodness, our old friend Ricky Williams. Who will be the Dolphins' next defensive coordinator? All right, this question has been asked a couple of times, and I don't want to be a broken record, but I will give you the Dolphins' defensive coordinator candidates that have already interviewed or are scheduled to interview. And going down the list from left to right, starting with Brandon Staley, I think he's got to be the most appealing option just based on his recent head coaching experience and his track record as a defensive coordinator with the Rams. Remember, in 2020, he orchestrated the top defense in the NFL with the Rams. Anthony Campanile, internal candidate that interviewed for the defensive coordinator job last year before they went with Vic Fangio. Ryan Slowik, the outside linebacker coach, another internal candidate. Bobby Babich already accepted the Bills defensive coordinator job. And now working our way down the right side, Leslie Frazier was a head coach for the Miami Vikings, was most recently the Bills assistant head coach and defensive coordinator from 2020 to 22. That's a guy to keep your eye on. Chris Kiffin, the son of Monty Kiffin, brother of Lane Kiffin. I don't think it's his time yet. I think he'll be a defensive coordinator in the near future in the NFL, but not with the Miami Dolphins. Anthony Weaver, a very appealing candidate as well, the Ravens defensive line coach and associate head coach. And you go down that list, to me, the top 3, the 2 internal candidates and Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley Anthony Campanile, and then Ryan Slowik are my top three. If I had to pick one out of that, I don't hate the idea of Anthony Campanile because look at what he did on Hard Knocks. He gets the people going. He gets them ready to play. He gets them motivated. And we saw after Vic Fangio left, not a lot of guys on that defense liked playing for Vic Fangio. And I think Anthony Campanile would bring an element of motivation, an element of run through the wall for my coach type of mentality. I think that goes a long way in the NFL. Every Noodle, one of the realest of the real. Welcome to Dolphins Today. Great to see you in the comments and asking some questions. What tight end prospects could Miami target in the draft? Now, I love this question. I proposed a monumental trade for Brock Bowers, who is the tight end for the Georgia Bulldogs, which could be a huge deal to move up to probably within the top 10. But I don't think anybody really liked that trade proposal I put together, but he's obviously the top tight end on the board. And some mock drafts even have him falling to the mid to late first round. And if he does fall all the way to 21, I would love grabbing Brock Bowers, but I know there's more pressing needs than the luxury pick of a tight end. You got Jatavian Sanders out of Texas. He could be a guy to keep your eye on. Now, Jared Wiley out of TCU is interesting. I went to a couple of TCU games this past season, and he's just such a big body and really had kind of that old school tight end feel to him. You know, a lot of times in the day and age of tight ends now, they're so athletic, and that's not a knock on them, but they're like, you know, more of the receiver type, whereas Jared Wiley looked like that true old school tight end, big blocking guy that also can be a threat in the passing game. I like Cade Stover out of Ohio State as well. Obviously, Ohio State with a long track record of producing NFL talent, especially at the wide receiver / tight end position. And Eric All out of Iowa. I know Iowa really struggled on offense, but my goodness, talk about tight end U. Just simply the fact that Eric All played tight end at Iowa, was a transfer from Michigan, had some good years with the Wolverines as well. Just the fact that you played tight end at Iowa makes me interested because look at the tight ends that have come out of Iowa. Sam Laporta, George Kittle, Noah Fant. I know I'm going to be missing some. There's other tight ends that have come out of Iowa, but TJ Hawkinson, I knew that was the one I was trying to think of. But the list goes on of tight ends that have come out of Iowa. It truly is tight end U. So for Eric All, the only thing I'll say about Eric All is when he left Michigan, he had some of the dramatic tweets of, oh, everybody turned their back on me. And it's like, dude, just toughen up and go play football. You know, and so that would be one thing I didn't necessarily love about Eric All when he left Michigan. But maybe people at Michigan did really let him down. But again, I want to know who you love, and I love Factor, America's #1 meal delivery service, and they're a proud presenting sponsor of today's show. So shout out to Factor, and here we are already through the month of January. Who can believe it? It's hard to believe, but you know what? No matter what the month is, Factor is there to help you reach your goals, and not just your New Year's resolutions, but I'm talking about making choices that lead to success, choices like healthy meals that are dietitian approved, fresh and never frozen, and oh, by the way, they're delicious and convenient. Take only 2 minutes to heat up, and then you're ready. And probably the best part, at least the best part for me, you say goodbye to annoying trips to the grocery store. I hate going to the grocery store. You say goodbye to the cleanup as well. I hate doing the dishes. Honestly, that's one of my least favorite things to do. My girlfriend and I fight all the time about who has to do the dishes, but not when we have Factor because there's no cleanup required. And oh, by the way, these meals are delivered straight to your door. They taste great. They're healthy, dietitian approved, fresh, never frozen. And because we love you and we care about you, we're offering 50% off when you use our code. So don't take my word for it. Head to factormeals.com/FinsChat50 and use code FinsChat50 to get 50% off. That's 50, baby. Hard to believe, but yes, half off, 50% off with that code FinsChat50. And yes, we love you and we care about you, so we'll put that link right in the comments and description of today's video. So we make it easy on you. Head to factormeals.com/FinsChat50 and use code FinsChat50 to get 50% off. That's code FinsChat50 at factormeals.com/FinsChat50. This one's coming in from Christina Wilkerson. Should we re-sign Connor Williams or just let him walk? feel like he's a better guard than center. Interesting, Christine, because I think Connor Williams performed at a very, very high level. I won't necessarily say Pro Bowl level before he was injured, but it's an interesting point about the guard versus center combination because sometimes he did have some errant snaps. Go back to that first game against the Chargers. He had a couple of quarterback exchange issues. Obviously, the game against the Chiefs in Germany, that final fourth down play, some said was a bad snap. But when you evaluate Connor Williams as the blocker, he only had 2 sacks allowed in his 10 games. The Dolphins were a significantly better offense with him in the lineup as the center. And I think he's versatile enough to play guard. So maybe you bring in a guy like Jackson Powers-Johnson out of Oregon. You put him at center, Connor Williams at guard, and that is a mean interior component to the offensive line that I would really like. Now, the contract details is something you have to work out because we know the Dolphins are not in a great space as far as the cap situation. But if Connor Williams is a guy that you invest in, and Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier and the rest of the front office deem this guy as somebody to build around, the statistics back it up. Because Connor Williams played in 9 games this year, and Connor Williams missed 9 games this year. The Dolphins' record with Connor Williams, 7-2. Without him, 5-4. So, again, not saying Connor Williams just equates to victories, but obviously the team played better with him in the lineup. So, I think you sign him. Let me know what you think. Down in the comments, what would you do with Connor Williams? Type S for sign or P for pass. This one's coming in from Anthony Manzano Mob Dolphins. Would you be shocked if Miami hires a guy like Jim Leonard? He has NFL experience from the Vikings, or maybe get Glenn Showman from Georgia for new defensive coordinator. I'll take the second half of the question first. I don't think Showman's ready to jump up to the NFL level yet, and I think they got a good thing going at the collegiate ranks with the Georgia Bulldogs, obviously with Kirby Smart, and I think his next gig would be a head coaching job at the Power 5 level collegiately. Now, first part of the question, would be shocked if Miami hires a guy like Jim Leonard. At this point, I would be shocked because the Dolphins have already cast a very, very wide net of candidates. And when you look at the number of guys they've interviewed, you have to factor in time. And it sounds kind of maybe simplistic thinking, but if you've already interviewed 8 to 10 guys and you think of a full day for an interview, because these aren't just a 30-minute Zoom call. I mean, they're spending the day with them. When you go through a coaching interview, you present your philosophies. You present your X's and O's. You get up on the whiteboard. You show what you can do as a defensive coordinator. You interact with the players. You have lunch with the team and the organization. And so these aren't just quick interviews. So the human value of time, I think, would suggest that if you haven't gotten an interview yet with the Dolphins for the defensive coordinator job, it's been a week. They have a number of viable candidates, and I don't think they're going to expand that pool to guys like Jim Leonard. So it might be disappointing, but I don't think there's going to be any candidate that rises from the unknowns and all of a sudden steals the defensive coordinator job. Unless maybe Mike Vrabel would be about the only name I can think of. But I think the Dolphins have it narrowed down to a very, very short list of viable, realistic candidates, and we've gone through each and every one of those candidates. So, again, unfortunately, not to be too rude or anything like that, but I just don't think that's happening. From Tua's touchdowns. What's going to happen with Tua? Great question. If the season started today, which it doesn't, there's a very, very long offseason in front of us, but Tua would be playing on his rookie deal still, but the 5th year of that rookie deal that the club exercised, and he'd be set to make about $23.2 million. And stop me if you've heard this one before, but the Dolphins are not in a good cap space, so the idea of the quarterback playing in his 5th year of that rookie deal, making $23.2 million, I don't think is the best case scenario for neither Tua nor the club. I think a new offer would allow the Dolphins to save some money and also allow Tua to make some more money while showing that they've invested in him over the long haul. So I think you restructure it and show that Tua is your guy, but it's not the type of deal that's going to be Joe Burrow money or any of the new quarterback deals that are setting the standard or setting the ceiling for quarterback deals. I think it's going to be kind of a middle-of-the-pack deal for a 4-year, 180, about is the number I have in my head, $100 million guarantee. I think that would satisfy the Dolphins. I think it would satisfy Tua and his camp, and I think it would also show that, hey, he proved that he can play in 17 games with the most passing yards in the NFL. We can't forget about that. And I know he didn't win a lot of the big games, and that's what the first comment on this video, the first comment on the next video, every comment on any Tua video is he didn't win the big games. But you know what? There's more than just the quarterback. I think in a lot of ways, leading the NFL in passing yards says a lot. He was tied for 5th most touchdowns. He had the 2nd best completion percentage with quarterbacks that threw at least 500 attempts. So there's enough there for me statistically. And Remo, we hate statistics. I know, I read every comment. But you still have to put some sort of proof in the pudding in the sense that Tua played in every game this season, played all 17 games, orchestrated a top-level offense that finished 2nd in scoring offense and with the most passing yards. So there's enough substance there to invest in the guy for the next several years without breaking the bank. And again, that $180 million over 4 years, I think, is where I keep landing that would satisfy both camps. What do you think we should do with Tua? Should Miami offer him a new contract extension or maybe experiment with the trade market? Maybe somebody else wants Tua. Or maybe you just sign somebody new. There's going to be some free agent quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins among them is the name that comes to mind. But let me know down in the comments, do you want Tua to get a contract extension, yes or no? From Champion 2038, do you think we can pick up Henry in free agency this year? Yeah, that was interesting a couple weeks ago when Derrick Henry said he always wanted to play for the Dolphins. And I think in a perfect world, yeah, bring in a big name like Derrick Henry. Obviously, that would help. He'd want to be there. He is a dominant goal line back that finds his way into the end zone. And despite Miami and Raheem Mostert having a breakout year, they weren't great in short yardage situations this year, which Derrick Henry would certainly help. But you also limit yourself when you're the Miami Dolphins in really not having any available cap space, being $40 million in cap deficit to really experiment with the free agent market. And here's a look at the 2024 running back market as far as free agency. There are some big names on there. Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, my goodness, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler. These are noteworthy names. These are franchise-changing names, and while they've put up incredible statistics, I don't know if the Dolphins are going to be major players because the other side of the coin is I like this Dolphins running back room. Devon Achane with the breakout year as a rookie, Raheem Mostert setting a franchise record for the most rushing touchdowns, and even Jess Wilson Jr., going back to that Cowboys game, he had the game-sealing run that got him a first down, allowed them to run the rest of the clock out for that game-winning field goal. So I like the Dolphins running back room. If they could find a way to make it fit with Derrick Henry, and he wants to be a Dolphin, sure, go for it, but I just don't think realistically that's a possibility. All right, the season might be over, but the content never stops. We told you about our goal to get to 58,000 subscribers by the end of this month. Can we do it? I believe in you. I believe in each and every one of us to help Dolphins Today get there. So tell a friend about the channel, the largest Dolphins YouTube channel on the internet, and we are welcoming all. Welcome one, welcome all. If you don't love it, try it for a week, unsubscribe. It'd break my heart, but you know what? I think you'll like what you see because we bring you every angle covering the Miami Dolphins every single day on Dolphins Today. Hey, Chugs!
Good stuff. Good stuff. Good
questions. Hey,
questions.
Chugs. Yeah, shout out to the people that got the great questions in.
Hey, what you gonna do? Hey.
Oh, Dance King's in the chat now. What's up, Dance King?
Any O-lineman you can pick up in free agency? You're going to hate my answer.
No.
Honestly, no.
There never is. That's why drafting offensive linemen is so important.
Yeah.
I feel like we were going through that at the trade deadline with the Dolphins. Trade for this offensive lineman. Trade for this offensive lineman.
And the craziest thing is the best offensive lineman in free agency is Connor Williams.
Yeah.
Is your guy.
Yeah.
So the best free agent move is for you to keep your own guy. But besides that,
I also think this 2024 draft class is loaded at offensive line. We showed you that that list of potential offensive line targets for the Dolphins to get in the draft. And drafting the offensive line is so important because you get these guys on rookie deals. And I'll use the Detroit Lions as an example. Had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, a top running offense and top passing offense. They had guys like Frank Ragnow, who they drafted, Taylor Decker's homegrown, Graham Glasgow, the list goes on. And so you look at these top offensive line prospects, Jackson Powers-Johnson, the guy to go after. J.C. Latham was mocked to the Dolphins in the first round. Don't forget about the offensive linemen for Oregon State, Talise Fuaga, and Jordan Morgan as well. And that's not even all the offensive line prospects.
Morgan looks like he's on the yaya. I'm here for the NFL draft.
Why didn't the SID at Arizona do a retake? I mean, come on. What are we doing here?
I play offensive tackle for the University of Arizona. My name's Jordan Morgan. Hey, Frank Ragnow and Dan Skipper out of Arkansas. Go Hogs.
Yeah. No doubt. Dance King, that's right. Jacob Myers asks, when's our next live stream? Good news, my friend. Wednesday. In 1 week. Wednesday.
Unfortunately,
4:30 Eastern.
I won't be on. I know all 20 of you in the chat right now are going to miss me a ton, but I will not be available next week. I will be in Las Vegas.
Boo!
On Super Bowl Radio Row.
That's actually very cool. Shout out to Jeremy Chugg.
Doing all the legwork. I do squat 300, so
That's
there's
impressive.
a reason why they have me do all the legwork.
There is no doubt about that. Why hasn't anyone called me about my Radio Row credentials? Where do I pick them up?
Yeah.
you know, in The Office when they're doing Andy's play and they come in and do the live rehearsal, and Michael's like, why didn't anybody call me? What part of my playing?
See, I have a checking and a savings account. And to go from the savings to the checking, it's like a 2-day period. So it's one of those things.
It's coming. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Arnold Balami, congrats, bro.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Go Chugs, Kristen Reinhardt.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, at Jeremy Chuggs, I'll be posting from Radio Row and from Super Bowl Media Days. So if you want to see what's up with the shit organizations of the 49ers and the Chiefs, go follow me on Twitter.
Yeah.
Also, I'll try to do some other cool interviews. I know there'll be other talking heads out there. Maybe I can get Jane Slater to say something out of pocket.
That would be awesome. I love it. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. We're going to get up on out of here. Always appreciate you guys. Love you guys. And we'll see you next time on Dolphins Today.
Hey!